All right, everybody, let's talk about Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Decades after promiscuous teen Mary Lou Maloney dies during a prank gone wrong, she returns as a spirit out for revenge and eager to punish the culprit, her one-time boyfriend, Billy Nordham. Yeah, this one's basically Carrie meets The Exorcist meets Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie also stars Brock Simpson, who was one of the kids in the opening of Prom Night, the original, and it also stars the character Art Blank from Saw 4, if that was his name. I think it was Art Blank. He was like Jigsaw's lawyer or some business partner. He was in Saw 4, I think parts of 5. So I saw him, I was like, that looks like that one dude. And yep, it's him. So yeah, what do I like about this movie in particular, Prom Night 2? I like the opening. I just thought it was kind of silly. I mean, how quickly her dress lit on fire like that. She has a very flammable dress on. And Josh is the best character in the movie, played by Brock Simpson. I thought he had the best lines. He's the comic relief. He's basically where all the comedy comes from, except for a little couple of lines from Mary Lou when she's possessing Vicki. But Josh, he's the comedic character. He has like all the Exorcist jokes. This movie's meta, and I kind of like that. I like the meta humor in the movie. I like that it acknowledges movies like The Exorcist. Like, this is way before Scream, and this is a year after Jason Lives. So it seems like this became a very popular trend at the time in 86 and 87, where things were becoming more meta and horror directors were being acknowledged even by naming characters after them. Jason Lives was name dropping like Cunningham Road and, Carpenter this and Craven that. This movie does the same thing. Every character is named after a horror director, so I thought that was cool. Just like Final Destination, I think, names their characters after famous horror people. There's a character in here named Carpenter, the t-shirt's Craven, and you got Henenlotter, who did, Basket Case. So, and I like the cast. Like, I like having Michael Ironside. I think he's good in this. And I thought the person who played Mary Lou was good in the role. Like, I like her. I wish they would have kept that actress in part 3. I liked some of the effects. Some of them weren't executed all that well, but I like that, you got like a rocking horse that comes alive. Like, it has very Nightmare on Elm Street inspired sequences that just feel thrown in just to display effects. You know, this movie definitely feels like there was production issues because it just kind of goes all over the place and doesn't really make sense, things that are happening. But this movie is just one of those movies where you just gotta like check your brain at the door and just accept what's happening, go along for the ride, don't ask questions or you're not gonna have fun. Just be like, oh, that looks cool. Does it make sense? No, but whatever. I like that this one tries to have a little bit more fun, especially in the second half. That's when the movie really picks up steam. I was not as engaged in the first half. The second half I really liked. That's what saves the movie. It has more fun than the original, so I'll give it that. I feel like I'm not giving enough positives to this movie, so to give a couple extra ones here, I'm going to compare it to part 1 and say that this one looks better and it has boobies. As for the negatives, first up, this isn't a huge one. It doesn't really affect my viewing experience, but this is not a sequel. Like, why call it Prom Night 2? Just call it Hello, Mary Lou or something like that. It's not really a sequel. It has nothing to do with the first one. There is no continuity to the first one except for it's the same high school, I believe. But I get it. Like, what could you do after the end of part 1? The killer's defeated. There's nothing else you can do. Jamie Lee Curtis is not coming back. This is like 7 years after the first one, so I get it. But I just like in a franchise for a story to keep kind of building and going, from one to the next. The first 30 minutes of this movie were kind of boring. I just felt like some of it wasn't even necessary. There's just a couple of scenes that I feel like could have been taken out. And it could have used more action in the middle. Like, there should have been more death scenes in this movie. There should have been more, Vicki causing havoc at this school. There should have been more people at that school that she had beef with that she could have taken out or something. Like, just have fun with this concept of her being possessed. They don't really take advantage of that concept enough in this movie, all her powers. And outside of like one death scene in this movie, which I thought was kind of cool and very Nightmare on Elm Street like, the other death scenes, nothing special. Like, all cutaway stuff and very bad like electricity effects that never look good in any movie even today. So I wasn't a fan of the kills in this movie. Part 3 actually does a way better job of that. It has more fun with the kills in Part 3, so I actually like Part 3 for that. And the whole Carrie ripoff ending is very underwhelming. Like, nothing happens. It tries to act like a lot's happening. There's a lot of, like, sparks and flashes, light bulbs breaking and shit, so it kind of feels like there's a lot going on, but there's really nothing going on in that last act, in that last scene there. I mean, she's full on Carrie at that moment. She's flipping tables, but the way it's executed, it's just very lackluster. Like, one person dies in that scene, and that's just lame. Like, she should have fucked everybody up. And lastly, I don't like the ending of this movie. It's very Nightmare on Elm Street once again, and like, it seems like they were purposely trying to rip off the ending of Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the same scene basically. It's just a different killer is in the car instead. You know, like, and it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things in this movie where I was just asking how, why, huh? It was just confusing, and that's what happens when I watch supernatural movies like this. I'm just constantly asking questions. So final thoughts, I thought this was okay. I just wish they would have spent less time trying to pay tribute to other movies and try to make their own unique, cool movie. Did a lot more with this concept. Did, you know, a lot more carnage, have a lot more fun with it. It was way too serious. I think they should have went a little bit more comedic like Part 3 did. And yeah, it's all right. It has some decent moments in it, so I'm not going to say it's not worth seeking out. Just don't expect the same thing as Part 1. It's a whole different it's a whole different concept and story here, but it's entertaining enough. So when it comes to Prom Night 2, hello Mary Lou, consider streaming it, borrowing it from a friend, or renting it at Redbox. So in this opening, we got Mary Lou going to a confession booth, and she's like, "Forgive me, Father. I've sinned many times. I've thought about having sex with boys, many different boys, and many times. I've done this many times, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "And you know what? I enjoyed all of it." So that was pretty cool. Fun opening. And she writes in lipstick on the wall, like, "For a good time, call Mary Lou. 555, blah, blah, blah." So, and she's a bitch. Like, she's not a likable character. Like, you don't care that she gets lit up in flames. She deserves it. She takes this poor guy to the prom, who I think he says that they've been dating a year, and the first thing she does when they get there is make him go get her punch so that she can go in the back room and start fucking this guy. And she didn't care that they got caught or anything. She was glad they got caught. So she's just a bitch. And so this cherry bomb lights her dress on fire very quickly, and a single person puts her out. And in no movies ever does anyone ever stop, drop, and roll. So they're like criticizing her later on for like when Vicki gets possessed and she starts to look like Mary Lou, like her style of clothing is like very, very 50s. Her jargon is 50s. They're like criticizing her then later on in the movie, but they should have been criticizing this chick. I didn't write her name down, but the one who's like pregnant. They didn't criticize her once for looking the way she does. Like, did you see the way she looked? Like, oh my god. And I forgot to mention that there was kind of foreshadowing earlier when she's like making out with that dude in the back. There's like flames on the wall that were like spray painted or something. So that was like foreshadowing her demise later. And we find out that that guy that she was trying to have sex with back there later became a priest. And I find that very hard to believe. I'm not saying it's impossible, but a guy like that, I don't see it happening. Usually people who become priests, they're raised to eventually become priests. They're raised to go to church, and they're very religious. They're not going to have sex at prom like that guy and talk the way he was talking. Like, I don't see it. Did he become a priest because he was like taking a vow, like, I'm not going to let another woman touch me again, so I'm just going to become a priest and never have sex again. I want the last woman to be Mary Lou who touched me. Like, I don't see him becoming a priest. I just think that's kind of bullshit. And it's a big coincidence that the woman who frees Mary from her grave just so happens to be dating the son of the guy who killed her. Why would they even keep a crate of like her tiara and like cape in the basement of the high school many years later? Like, why is that even there? That seems personal. Maybe it would have made more sense if it was at Michael Ironside's house instead. But yeah, this pregnant chick, she's like, "I'm pregnant." And then the next scene is her dying. So I feel like that whole scene, all that setup was just to be like adding shock value to her death. Like, oh my god, a pregnant chick died. Like, they did that shit in Friday the 13th Part 3, and it doesn't add much shock value. I mean, most people today don't even believe that what's in her stomach is even a soul, a living person. I'm not going to get into that debate, but I'm just saying, it's like, it's not adding much shock value. This scene kind of bugged me because they're like teasing you. They're like, oh, we're going to chop her head off with this paper cutter. And then it just completely goes in a different direction. She gets hung, and then her body gets thrown out the window after, which I thought that was awesome, very brutal, like adding insult to injury. She's already dead, and then Mary Lou throws her ass out the window after hanging her and breaking her neck just because she was fucking with her tiara. And so yeah, that was awesome. And then why does I just thought it was irrelevant, like the priest at the funeral is like talking about violence on TV, like that's to blame for this chick killing herself? Like, she hung herself. I mean, that's what they think. What does that have to do with her suicide? You're blaming TV violence for her killing herself? That's two different things. You're apples and oranges. This is really stupid to point out, but there was multiple characters in this movie wearing sunglasses indoors. A guy at the diner who works there, he's just wearing sunglasses. This kid in class wearing sunglasses. Like, that's against dress code. You're not allowed to wear sunglasses. I couldn't wear this hat in class. That's how stupid dress codes are. You know, like, or chew gum. Like, that's not a dress code, but it's still a stupid fucking rule. But yeah, there's just people wearing sunglasses indoors throughout this whole movie. Like, in every other scene, I kept seeing it. It's like, what's with this sunglasses thing? I'm confused as to when she got possessed. Did she get possessed when she opened up the crate in the basement, or did she get possessed after she visited her grave? Because it seemed like everything started to happen after she visited the grave. You know, it was like she started talking and dressing like her and seeing things after the grave, but her friend got killed and all this other stuff was happening after the whole crate opening. So I don't, like, did it take a while for Mary Lou's spirit to get to Vicki after she opened it? Like, I don't know. Like, that's what I said about supernatural movies. I'm just like, wait, huh? Like, how did this happen? Like, what's going on? The transfer I watched had a boom mic in the one scene when Michael Ironside's talking to the priest. Like, you can just see it like going from person to person. So yeah, the transfer I watched was not good. It's on Amazon Prime. We get the scene with the cool rocking horse, and like it has like these red evil eyes and this long like tongue coming out. I thought that was pretty cool. She starts seeing like cockroaches at the cafeteria and like has all these hallucinations. She like falls into the chalkboard. All this weird stuff happening for some reason, I don't know. Like I said, it's just for a visual. You're not supposed to question it, but I can't help it. Like, why is this happening? Why is Mary Lou doing this? Why is she making her see this shit? What purpose does it serve? Nothing really. It's just for the audience. So all of a sudden, this teacher who never seemed attracted to Vicki, after she starts dressing up like a woman in the 50s, he's like groping her, grabbing her ass in class in front of everybody. And then she like sets his crotch on fire. But I wish they would have done something different there. Like, again, wasted opportunity. That could have been a death. Like, that's the problem with this movie, is when I watch it, I'm just constantly thinking about, like, how could that have been better? So therefore, I just have a less good time watching the movie. And that's another scene where I was like, that could have been so much better. They could have done something completely more wild and awesome than that. Like, he gets, like, a little bit of fire on his crotch, and then he doesn't die. You know, it probably didn't even hurt him. Like, he just kind of freaked out a bit. Like, we never actually get to see him later on. You know, it's just such a disappointing scene. But I love how her friend in that scene, like, she sees that happening, and she's so quick to be like, oh, it was you. Like, Vicki, you're possessed. I knew it. Like, she's so quickly on board with the idea that she's possessed and that she somehow caused that. I mean, that's a stretch. It would take a lot to convince somebody that your best friend is possessed just because they are wearing a different sweater and their hair's in a ponytail and they're saying swell, you know, using jargon, I guess, from the 50s. And then some t-shirt gets his crotch lit on fire for a second. Oh, you must be possessed. Just like in Prom Night 4, we almost get girl-on-girl action here, and we see Vicki just walking around topless in the locker room. And this is the one cool death in the movie, when the lockers squeeze together and they crush her in the locker. Awesome. But what the hell was up with that blood coming out? We get the scene where the priest gets killed, and I love that she's like, do you want to fuck me? And it's basically like a recreation of the opening scene, the whole confession booth, where, you know, at first she seems like she's just genuinely trying to confess, and then she's like, you want to fuck me, father? But that scene feels like it was moved. Like somewhere in the editing they kind of moved that scene forward some, because she's talking about how like, oh, I hurt my friends and I gave in to my sexual desires. I tried to have sex with my boyfriend. None of that shit happened at this point. The whole locker room scene, that was after. She never hurt her friend. She never had sex with her boyfriend, not even close. All that shit was after that scene. So I feel like this priest scene was moved in the editing. The best line in this movie is, "Your mother sews socks in hell, Father cares." That cracked me up. That's the best line in the movie, easily. So she goes home and she's making out with her dad, and not once did he push her back. He was really into it. And I love how the mother is like just so mad at the daughter about it and never once like being mad at her husband too. And you can tell that their relationship is shit. That she hasn't been having sex with him probably in forever, you know. And you can kind of tell on second watch that there is maybe some kind of an attraction to his own daughter. It's very sickening. But yeah, he doesn't even push her back at all. He's like into it. They're making out for like over 10 seconds before the mom catches them. And this whole scene is straight up Carrie. Like, you got the over religious mom saying to the daughter, like, you're not going to prom, you're staying here, blah, blah, blah. And then she uses like telekinetic powers to push her mom out the door. Straight up Carrie. Another couple of quick little nitpicks I have is, okay, Michael Ironside, he goes to the grave, doesn't realize, hey, this grave is it's freshly dug up. Somebody just recently buried somebody here. This grave's 30 years old. But doesn't think anything of it, because Mary Lou, she buries the priest there after she kills him. But the second nitpick is, how the hell did he dig up that grave and not drop a single bead of sweat on his forehead? He looks like he dug it up in a second. Do you have any idea how difficult and tiresome digging up a grave would be to do it by yourself at Michael Ironside's age in this movie, to take a shovel and dig a 6 by 6 foot deep grave all within an hour, it seems he did? Like, bullshit. This one girl is willing to suck dick and pay over $100 in 1987. $100, that's a lot. Just to become prom queen? Why? Who gives a shit? And I find it very odd that in 1987 they're already using computers to determine who's the winner. Like, wasn't it paper ballots back then? I mean, it's all for the kill that they're setting up here, where it says, you're dead wrong, and then he gets electrocuted because somehow Mary Lou, in a completely different location, knows what he's doing in this location. How? Again, supernatural, don't question it, but I can't help it. How the fuck does she know what he was doing there? Again, missed opportunity. His death could have been way better. His head should have exploded from the electrocution, but instead he starts bleeding out his nose and crap. It didn't look good. It could have been way better. Kind of like in Poltergeist 3, we got a body coming out of another person's body. I'm sure that's in a lot of movies, but it kind of took me back to Poltergeist 3 when the one chick came out of Zelda Rubinstein's body. So Vicki, she gets shot on the stage, and then Mary Lou's like breaking out of her, and I thought that was awesome, and she looked freaky. But then she starts quickly, like, regenerating, like, all her skin's coming back and crap. Another mistake. They should have just kept her as a freaking corpse. That would have looked way more awesome and would have been better for me to keep her looking like that. That was way more scary. And then, this scene is basically Carrie. She's using her powers to, like, flip over tables and light bulbs are exploding. And then one person dies. The bitch who gave a blowjob to the one guy. A light thing like falls down on her, a neon light stabs her in the stomach, and she dies like instantly. Not possible. I love that Josh, the guy who's always bringing up The Exorcist throughout the movie, he's in a coffin or something in the basement of the school, and his head spins around. Another reference to The Exorcist. So then they think they defeated Mary Lou by putting a tiara on her head, and Bill gives her a kiss, and then they think it's over. But then we get this Nightmare on Elm Street ending where they get in the car and they're like, it's all okay. But then, Michael Ironside in the front seat's like talking like Mary Lou, like, oh, I'm possessed by Mary Lou now. Just a typical horror movie ending where it's like, it's not over. It was very Nightmare on Elm Street. And why wouldn't Bill, the principal, be arrested? There was a lot of people there who saw him shoot Vicki on stage. And they all think that Vicky's dead still, don't they? Like, he should have been arrested. He brought a gun to school and started firing. Come on. And Vicki being alive is just bullshit. It doesn't make sense. Again, supernatural, you can't question it, but how is she still alive? She got shot 6 times, like Michael Myers, On stage, she's dead. Her body broke open. Her physical body broke open because of Mary Lou. She should have been fucking dead. Bringing her back is a cop-out move, just to set up this happy ending, like, oh, it's okay. No, psych, and, Nightmare on Elm Street ending. Like, no, she should have been dead. That's the ending, all right? Like, yeah, we defeated Mary Lou, but we lost Vicki in the process. What a bummer. Like, that's the way the movie should have ended. All right, I'm sick of this whole, like, let's just take it all back and bring everybody, just like a Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, oh, there's Tina in the car. There's Johnny Depp. They're all back. This movie does the same fucking thing. I don't like it. Stop. I feel like they shot two different versions of this movie. Did I watch the, like, censored version and the lesser version of the two? Because even that paper cutter scene, I feel like that was the original death. And then they just figure, well, the MPAA is going to cut this, so let's shoot two death scenes where one, she gets her head chopped off, and then one where she gets hung. Because even later on, you see, I think, that chick's head severed in, like, a fryolator. So it's like they plan on cutting her head off, right? I'm just more disappointed with this movie the more I talk about it. But I'm not going to come down too hard on it. It's still enjoyable. It has its moments, but man, was I underwhelmed. Especially on the second viewing. So those are my thoughts on Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. Do you like this one more than 3? I mean, 2 and 3 are the ones that are similar to each other, so which one's better, 2 or 3? I'll let you know next week when I talk about Part 3. So let me know what you thought about this movie in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you've seen here, you can hit this like button and become a subscriber today just by clicking on my cartoon face in about 5 seconds. And until next time, Auf Wiedersehen.